I'm going to show you basically what I call my ultimate subflow, my ultimate go-to flow for getting records of various types. I use this pretty often in my line of work. So I'll kind of show you all the steps in this and how, example, if I could use this either in screen flows or any record trigger flow, things like that. So the actual subflow is an auto launch flow, so you can call it from basically anywhere you'd like. And I'll go through just how this works. So I covered this in an earlier video, but this is getting the base URL of the environment that you're in. And I'll reference the card in this video and kind of how that's used. So what this does is, so for this first one, you pass in basically get base URL, constant true, it's a Boolean. So if this is true, we'll go down this path and assign this variable. So this variable is basically this formula, and this formula is just kind of a copy and paste thing, but it basically gets the base URL, which is all this. So how this would be used, I explain it more in another video, but you can basically have this plus the object ID, and that will forward you to where that record lives. So it's just kind of like a shortcut. So it is handy sometimes. Next one is a queue. So how these work. So this is a variable that's input. So how this works is on this, when it's used as a subflow, what I have for all these is the developer name. So it's more reliable because the API name can't change after it's created. Like the display name can change, but the API name is more reliable. So that's what these input searches, how I set them up. So this is the input. So if that exists, essentially, so if this is null equals false, meaning there's something there, it'll go find a queue. So type is queue, and developer name is what that input search is. And I'll return that record, and then we'll store that ID of this queue in this variable. And this queue variable is available for output, meaning it's going to be able to come out of the flow, and you can use the ID on this flow. So this is a screen flow, so you can store this in a variable on this screen flow, for example, here, and just a text variable. And I have it set up so sometimes maybe you need to do 2 queues like in one go. I have it set up so if you need more than one, kind of same idea, queue input to search. If that exists, you get the second queue input and store that in another variable. And now it goes out, and that stores, you can store another one here. You can kind of keep going down the line depending on how often you need multiple queues, like in one subflow request kind of thing. So that's how you kind of divide that out, so it's more efficient. There's only going out in these paths if there's actually a value filled in. If not, it just kind of skips it. So this is actually very quick if you don't put in any variables or any inputs, I should say. So next is record type, same kind of idea as before. We have an input variable. If that exists, we'll get the record type, which is developer name, is that, and we store it. So same kind of idea, the record type 1, you store that. So this is going to be very similar, but I'll go through all these. So permission set group. So same kind of idea, you're inputting that. See here, so here is the developer name or API name. So you're searching for that. And then how to search for that permission set group is object permission set group, developer name, and then it passes in this input variable. And again, it stores this as output. So you can use that in the flow that's calling this. And one thing to note for this record type search, it searches record types of all objects. So be careful of not naming the same record type in multiple objects, because it could find the wrong one, essentially, if it's that record type name is used in more than one place, and there's ways to account for that, but I won't get into that in this video. So let's see, permission set license, same kind of idea. You have an input, then the permission set license, object permission set license, developer name. You pass that search field in, and you store that as an output variable. These are all text, by the way. And then permission set, oh sorry, that was permission set license. Permission set license, yeah. And then permission set itself, same idea, we have an input. And then permission set is the object and the name, permission set input, then we store that or output that, so we can reference it later. This one is for user roles. We have an input, then the object is role developer name, and then what you passed in for the search, and then this is what's stored in the output. User profile, same idea. You have an input, and then you're searching for the name, and then storing that in an output variable. Again, these are all text. Custom notifications. So you have a search input, and then developer name is you pass that in, and then you output it in a custom variable output. User, so this is looking up a user by email. So user, email, and then the input, then you're storing the user ID from what it found. The last thing is email template, same kind of thing, input, and then object email template, the name, the email template, and you can output the email template ID if you need more, like if you need like the HTML body or value, you can kind of you can store those too if you'd like. I'm just kind of going into the base. You can expand it as you need. So that's kind of how that works. So to run it from, say, a screen flow, so you add this is the name of the flow we're just looking at, and these are all the inputs. So this is the developer name of the email template, base URL is true. This is the API name for permission set group, permission set license, the queue, another queue, record type. There's an email, search, profile. This one, it's actually just a name. And then the role. And then these are all the variables that you store these in, and these are all text as well. All these variables that you store. So basically what you do is do new resource, variable, your variable here, and then text. You can leave these unchecked. You don't need to move them anywhere else. So how this would work, just debug this, you can kind of see how it looks like when you run it. So this is the start of the subflow. So these are all the inputs that you passed, and it goes through each of the decisions. So that was true, so this is what it returned with. The queue searched for members, came back with this ID. Same thing, Q2 searched for that, came back with this. Record type searched for that, came back with this. Permission set group, it looked for marketing, came back with this. Permission set license, searched for Slack, came back with this. Permission set another Slack, permission set, or Slack service user came back with this ID. User role, CFO, came back with this ID. Profile, search for system administrator, came back with that ID. Notification, search for case notification, came back with this ID. Search for this email, came back with that ID. Searched for this email template, came back with that. And this is basically just a recap of everything. So this is the variable that it's stored in to use within the screen flow. So this is, you can use this later. It's very unlikely to use all these in one go, but I'm just kind of showing you all just as an example of how these would return. So this is the variable you can use later on in the flow as you need to. And this is what it basically equals. So this variable equals that all the way down kind of thing. So that's kind of how this works. Let me know what else you think would be handy, like in an ultimate kind of go-to subflow. And just to kind of show you, if you run this, say you just use run get one thing, it runs very, very quickly. So 0.33 seconds just to get the base URL and kind of skipping everything else. So it's very efficient too, because there's no get records unless you put in input, then it just kind of skips and goes down the whole line. So even though it has a lot of things in here that it could potentially do, it skips all the ones. So decisions are actually very efficient and it ran through all that very quickly. And even this ran pretty quick as well. So let me know if you have any questions on this, how you would add to this ultimate subflow. This is kind of how I've used it so far for my work case. And yeah, catch you next time.